Now available in paperback and e-readers. Isis, Bride of Dracula. The Goddess Next Door and John Haynes team up to take on the dark vampire lord in this action-packed Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Bride of Dracula in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers today. A 10-year-old boy wound up losing his life last Saturday in a dispute between neighbors over a driveway. Now, in this incident, 57-year-old Albert Wallace had brought his son Justin to his sister's house on Saturday evening in Far Rockaway, Queens, and he was in the basement when he heard shots ring out. And in this incident, a 29-year-old nephew had driven his vehicle into the driveway and was unloading items out of the vehicle. Now, one of these neighbors who shares the driveway came out when the 29-year-old man was unloading the items, and he demanded that he remove the vehicle from the driveway, and the man said that he would move the vehicle once he had unloaded the items. Unfortunately, that's not the answer the individual wanted to hear, and they wound up taking out a firearm and shooting the 29-year-old man, and one of the shots wound up shooting and killing the 10-year-old boy, Justin Wallace. And the police see this as an isolated incident in the escalating crime here in New York City, but when I take a critical examination of this tragic incident which took place in Queens, I see yet another incident in the ongoing man crisis that I detail in my book, The Man Crisis. And the suspected shooter, as I see it, fits the pattern and profile I talk about regarding beta males in my book, The Man Crisis. Now, when it comes down to this suspected shooter, it's clear to me that this male clearly does not have good critical thinking skills, the ability to use logic and reason, or the ability to even be patient. Because instead of him being able to navigate through his emotions over this individual's vehicle being in the driveway, instead he acted on his impulses, went out here, got a firearm, and then decided to shoot this 29-year-old man, not thinking about where the other bullets were going to go. And one of those bullets sadly wound up striking this 10-year-old boy, taking his life. And this is all because an individual got caught up in his emotions over a guy driving into a driveway and unloading some boxes and having to park on the sidewalk. Now, I know a lot of these neighbors out here get into beefs over common areas like driveways and yards, but a man has to know how to navigate through his emotions, and he has to learn patience and have some self-control, because these common areas are just not worth you losing an important intangible to your manhood, which is your freedom. And this male practically put his freedom at risk, all because he was caught up in his feelings and acted impulsively. And now, instead of him being able to go back to his home, he is now on the run because he just was not thinking critically about his actions, and now he's going to have to deal with the consequences of those actions he participated in. Because when he acted impulsively and wound up shooting and wounding that 29-year-old man and then murdering this 10-year-old boy, he is now going to wind up, once they catch him, charged with attempted murder, and he's going to be charged with second-degree murder at the minimum for the death of that 10-year-old boy. And that's all that can happen to a beta male when he acts on his impulses. Because he doesn't have discipline, self-control, and patience, he will escalate a minor matter into a major series of felonies. And once he escalates things into a major series of felonies, he is the one who winds up losing at the end of the day, because this man will not be going back to his home in Far Rockaway once the police wind up catching him. No, he's going to be going to Central Booking, and then after he goes to Central Booking in Queens, he will be taking a trip to Rikers Island, where instead of him being able to rest and relax in his own home, he is now going to have to deal with Bubba and Tiny, and he's going to have to deal with them turning that tight end into a wide receiver and having to be traded and exchanged for ramen noodles, Fritos chips, and Little Debbie snack cakes. And that's all because this beta male was so caught up in his feelings about a parking space that now, once law enforcement eventually catches him, they are going to park him inside of a jail cell where he will be waiting for trial, and then eventually he will wind up in the prison system, all because he was upset over a driveway, and now he's going to be driven back into the prison system where these guys, Bubba and Tiny, will be driving into his backside, all because he didn't know how to have some discipline and self-control, and did not know how to work out a conflict in a constructive manner. But when it comes down to beta males, they are oftentimes in their feelings and wanting to sate their feelings, not understanding that there is a consequence for one's actions. And they oftentimes think about sating those feelings as related to whatever is offending them, like in this case, this guy being parked in a driveway, and not understanding that for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction, and oftentimes in some cases there is a response where one has to deal with the consequences of their actions. And because this individual didn't think, what happened was a 10-year-old boy wound up losing his life, never getting a chance at life, because this beta male individual was caught up in his feelings about being inconvenienced as related to a parking space. And because he was caught up in his feelings, he decided to go get this gun and forever change the lives of people. And that really again shows how sad many of these beta males are out here, and how dangerous these beta males are. Because when it comes down to these beta males, many of these individuals are ticking time bombs, and the scariest part about them is not knowing when they're going to go off or what damage they'll do when they go off. Because when these men explode in their rage, they participate in a spectrum of extremely violent behaviors, and these violent behaviors can wind up taking the lives of innocent people, like this 10-year-old boy who never got a chance at life, all because this individual was impatient, impulsive, and did not have the self-control to understand that a common space like a driveway is not worth taking somebody's life over, and is not worth losing your freedom over. And this incident was one of the scarier ones here in New York, and it's another example of why I tell people they need to keep their heads on a swivel. Because when you have to deal with beta males, there is no telling what they'll do whenever they're provoked. And it can be anything as minor as looking at one of these individuals that can set one of these men off to participate in an explosive rage. And in this era of COVID-19, most people, again, need to keep their head on a swivel, because the fuse for a lot of these beta males has been accelerated due to the stress of the COVID-19 pandemic, and many of these men are on short fuses, and we don't know, again, when they're going to go off or what damage they will do or what harm they will do to others. And that's what makes these times very tense times here in America, because we're not just seeing an increase in the violence of these beta males, as crime has escalated, we are seeing an increase in the frequency of the violence that these beta males participate in. And this tragic incident, again, shows us how dangerous these guys are, and it shows us how you have to be very careful when dealing with these kind of males, because they are a clear and present danger. And sadly, most in America, they are only acknowledging the crime as related to what's going on, the increase in crime. But that increase in crime has to do with the man crisis that has been going on all across this country for the last 50 years, as many of these males being raised primarily in places like single mother households or households with beta male fathers or divorced households do not have the male life skills that most men grew up with 50 years ago, like critical thinking, like problem solving, and like learning skills like discipline and self-control. And because these men learned how to feel instead of think, they wind up acting in ways that wind up being extremely dangerous for other people. So that's one of the reasons America is having a problem these days, is because we're having a man crisis going on all across this country that no one wants to acknowledge. People will talk about the crime, people will talk about the guns, but the main reason why so many of these men are participating in violent crimes with firearms is because of the way they have been raised in this gynocentric society, where boys were taught to be kinder, gentler, and sensitive, but not understand that they have to learn how to control their feelings that instead of expressing them. So this man crisis has been going on all across this country, and most politicians don't want to acknowledge the man crisis that creates many of these violent beta males, because it points a finger directly at a certain political party that created many of these policies that led to the creation of the beta male, such as the welfare state, and even new, more modern policies like bail reform. They all come from a certain political party, and that party, which is now in power right now, doesn't want the finger pointed back at them for creating this beta male. So they don't want to acknowledge that they created the man crisis, so they don't want to talk about it. And instead of wanting to talk about it, they want to talk about going out here and participating in creating another sort of a war on crime. But what we need is an investment in men. And the reason why we need an investment in men is because many of our males are suffering because they just don't have the life skills to know how to survive in the world and know how to work out conflicts over basic things like a common space between properties, such as a driveway. Now, if you want to learn why so many males participate in violence like this, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis on Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. And if you want to see me make more videos talking about the man crisis and men's issues, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback. Those who refuse the gift of eternal life are condemned to wander in the darkness of eternal night. Get your copy of Eternal